Good evening, citizens of Portsmouth and my colleagues on City Council. I want to welcome everyone to our City Council meeting Tuesday, June 13th. And at this time, I will ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence. Afterwards, we will all say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would ask my colleagues on council to please note your presence electronically.
Seven members of City Council are present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We do have the minutes of a called meeting on May 23rd, 2023, and a regular meeting on May 23rd, 2023. Do we have a motion and a second?
Move adoption.
Second.
I would ask my colleagues to vote electronically.
Council members, if you could vote again, please. The minutes are adopted 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would you please read the speaker's statement?
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, City Council rules require a limit of up to 5 minutes to speak. As you approach the speaker's podium, you will notice a timer. At the beginning of your 5 minutes, you will see a green light. 4 minutes into your remarks, you will notice a yellow light. At the end of 5 minutes, you will see a red light, hear a beep, and we ask that you conclude your comments at that time. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on matters of public concern, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a belligerent, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. All remarks shall be directed to the City Council as a body rather than any particular member of City Council, staff, or the audience, and should be limited to matters that only the Portsmouth City Council can influence. A speaker who fails to observe this basic rule of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We've come to the item on our agenda of public hearings, item 23-204, public hearings on use permit and rezoning application. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the public hearing item?
Yes, sir. The item reads Commercial District 3, resolution granting the request of Ron Holloway with New Home Builders for a use permit to construct 4 townhouses on approximately 0.231 acre, combined acres located at 3002 and 3006 Deep Creek Boulevard in the General Mixed Use Zoning District. The future land use map of the Bill 1 Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan designates these properties for multifamily residential. The properties are owned by New Home Builders. Planning Commission recommended approval with amended conditions, and the resolution for your consideration is a resolution granting the request UP 23, a resolution granting a use permit UP 2307 to New Home Builders, Inc. to construct 4 townhouses at 3002 and 3006 Deep Creek Boulevard.
Thank you, ma'am. Is the applicant present? If the applicant is present, sir, if you would come forward, state your name and address, and sir, you will have 10 minutes. 10. Now, you don't need to take all of the 10.
Okay.
However, you have 10.
Thank you, sir. All right. My name is Ronald Holloway. I am the owner of New Home Builders Incorporated. So I purchased the property 3002 and 3006 Deep Creek Boulevard and Graham Street from the city of Portsmouth, actually economic department. And I've been working very diligently with Miss Julie Chop and Amy Mervine in the planning commission department to develop 4 townhouses. It's already general mixed use, so what I asked was for a use permit to have 4 driveways for each individual housings. We met with the planning commission May the 2nd, and they gave me a conditional approval. Only thing they asked me to do was make sure that I provided adequate shrubbery, and I also agreed to put a fence in the back of the 4 townhouses to separate the railroad track. I am a former member or former resident of the city of Portsmouth, and that property been there since I was a teenager, empty. So it's a very empty lot. And so these townhouses would add great value to the city of Portsmouth. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions from my colleagues on council? Sir, you may be seated.
All right, thank you.
This is a public hearing. You are not required to have signed up to come speak on this public hearing item. If you do come forward, you need to state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to come to speak on this public hearing item? Seeing none, then this public hearing is closed. I will need, at this time, a motion and a second from my colleagues on council.
Move adoption.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, I would ask all my colleagues to vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the next public hearing item?
Yes, sir. Hampton Roads Crossing, resolution granting the request of Larry S. Berry of AES Consulting Engineers for a use permit for a warehouse and light manufacturing use in order to develop 5 buildings totaling 61,200 square feet of approximately 7.34 acres of land located at 1050 University Boulevard in the conditional general mixed use zoning district. The future land use map of the Bill 1 Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan designates this property as commercial. The property is owned by Terry Peterson Residential Company. Planning Commission recommends approval with conditions, and the resolution you are considering reads a resolution granting a use permit, UP 2308, to AES Consulting Engineers for a warehouse and light manufacturing use at 1050 University Boulevard.
Thank you, ma'am. Is the applicant present? Please come forward, sir, and state your name and address, and you will have 10 minutes.
My name is Larry Berry. I'm a professional engineer with AES Consulting Engineers. My office is located in Chesapeake at 816 Greenbrier Circle, Suite F. I'm here today to address this application on this property in Hampton Roads Crossing. This is Hampton Roads Crossing. We started back in 2005. The majority of the land is in Suffolk. It was about 60 acres total in Portsmouth. On that 60 acres, 2 office buildings were built back in 2005. One is now owned by Old Dominion University's foundation. The developers tried over the last 20 years to find people that would occupy.
Excuse me, sir.
I'm sorry.
Could you please put the mic, there you go.
Okay, is that
Yes,
better?
because we want to hear you.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The developer has been trying over this time period to develop the 3rd office building that was originally planned on the site. Unfortunately, that market does not exist. It hasn't for some time, and we don't think there's any chance of that in the future. They had a number of meetings with the Economic Development Department to talk about what to do with this piece of land because it was sitting there fallow, and we really wanted to create an opportunity for taxes for the city and employment. And it was suggested that we look at developing these flex space buildings that would have partially light manufacturing and some assembly and some storage, and have access for both tractor-trailer vehicles and smaller vans like you'd see typically for deliveries. And we've been to the Planning Commission. We got an approval. We appeared in front of the Civic League and got a unanimous approval there. We had support from Old Dominion at the Planning Commission, and we're here tonight to ask council to approve us so we can get the plans into the city and get you tax base. We're estimating the development will cost about $10 to $12 million to put into buildings and site work, and we think we're going to get somewhere between 50 to 70 employees employed on this property. I'm glad to answer any questions if you need.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions from my colleagues on council? Councilman Hugel, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. I attended the Planning Commission session where this item was discussed. It's maybe worth pointing out that the Planning Department recommended denial to the Planning Commission because of the inconsistency of use that's proposed, with the hope being that it would be office space. But the discussion with the Planning Commission recognized that it's been 20 years trying to find someone to build office space in this property without success. My discussions with the Director of Economic Development, Mr. Donahue, he's a proponent for using the space for the proposed the discussion that we're looking at tonight, primarily because it offers unique space for this area, and so for those reasons, I intend to support the request. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions or concerns from my colleagues on council? Thank you, sir, for your presentation. This is a public hearing. You're not required to have signed up to speak at this public hearing. However, if you do come forward, you need to state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes. Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. We are in need of a motion and a second.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion amongst my colleagues? Seeing none, please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the next item?
Yes, sir. West Craddock, Shepherd Quality Homes, Inc. requests a rezoning on approximately .63 acres located at 2020 Greenwood Drive from conditional multifamily to the urban residential zoning district. The future land use map of the Bill 1 Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan designates this property for multifamily residential. The property is owned by Shepherd Quality Homes, Inc. Planning Commission recommends approval, and the item reads Zoning Amendment Ordinance Z 2303.
Thank you, ma'am. Is the applicant present? Good evening, ma'am. If you would come forward, state your name and address, you will have 10 minutes.
My name is Andrea Shepherd. I'm for Shepherd Quality Homes. It's
Yes,
2020
ma'am.
Greenwood. When we purchased it, it had the conditional zoning on it. We are trying to build 2 homes on it and have it reverted back to the urban residential. It supports both because of how close it is to the other shopping areas, but it's mostly residential in that area. We've already demolished the existing house that was on the property. So that's what we're trying to do, is to build 2 single-family homes on it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Are there any questions from my colleagues on council regarding this item? Well, ma'am, thank you for your presentation. This is a public hearing. If you wish to come speak on this item, you're not required to have signed up. However, if you come forward to speak on this item, you will need to state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes. Ma'am, please come forward. State your name and address.
Donna Lee Biggs, 3104 Garland Drive in Portsmouth. I'm trying to understand why they want to rezone this area if it has just one house on it? Why would they want to rezone it from multifamily mixed use to urban residential? It doesn't make sense to me why that would be unless they wanted to stick apartments on it. I mean, it's one resident, so why change? That's why I want to know.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any other speakers who wish to come forward and speak on this public hearing item?
Mr. Mayor,
Oh,
can someone answer a question?
someone,
for someone.
we can ask for someone to speak to the concern, sure. Could the applicant please come back up? Perhaps she has the best response for that.
So the property was originally urban residential. It still is 2 lots, but the conditional zoning was applied. It was supposed to revert once that conditional use expired. However, we had to reapply through zoning to have that taken off the deed. So only 2-family homes are being built, and it is 2 lots. So if the zoning were taken off of the verbiage of the deed, we would be able to build on it.
Thank you, ma'am, for that explanation. Are there any additional questions? And I will just state one more time, this is a public hearing. If you wish to come speak on this item, please come forward, state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes. Seeing none, this public hearing item is closed. We are in need of a motion and a second.
Move adoption.
Is there any additional discussion? I would ask my colleagues to vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you, ma'am. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the next item for public hearing?
Yes, sir. Z2302 Woodbine, ordinance granting the request of Scott Campbell with VIA Design Architects to rezone approximately 4.92 acres at 5311, 5315, 5319 High Street, and 3107 Honeysuckle Lane from general residential to multifamily urban residential in order to develop a 3-story, 42-unit senior living multifamily dwelling development. The applicant is currently requesting a use permit for a multifamily dwelling, UP 2404, which is your next item. The future land use map of the Bill 1 Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan designates this property for single-family residential, low, medium density. The properties are owned by Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority. Planning Commission recommends denial, deferred from your May 23rd, 2023 City Council meeting. And if adopted, the zoning ordinance would read zoning amendment ordinance Z2302. And just for council's attention, this item D is part 2. If item C is not approved, then you would not consider item D.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Is the applicant present? Please come forward, state your name and address, and you will have 10 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Scott Campbell with VIA Design Architects. Our address is 319 East Plume Street in downtown Norfolk. We were hired by PRHA to analyze this property for development of a senior multifamily apartment building. It currently is 4 parcels, single-family lots, but them combined is enough acreage to consider a multifamily development. With me today is Elisa Winston, the Deputy Executive Director of PRHA. I will hand it over to her to start first with why they purchased the property.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Again, my name is Elisa Winston. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority. As you are probably already aware, and based on the city's own housing study completed a couple of years ago, there is extreme lack of affordable housing in Portsmouth, not only in Portsmouth, but throughout the country. And because our seniors are our most vulnerable population, the authority decided a few years ago to build additional senior houses in the city of Portsmouth. And for the following reasons: the senior population is growing fast as baby boomers retire and live longer. Studies show that the number of Americans aged 65 and older is projected to double from 52 million to 95 million by 2060. Many seniors are living on a fixed income, which makes it very challenging to afford the high cost of housing, especially in areas with high rents and property values. Because of the cost to upkeep their homes and the cost of much-needed repairs and modifications, many seniors find that renting in the senior community is a much better alternative for them. Seniors living alone or far away from families often feel alone, which can negatively affect their mental and physical health. Our housing provides opportunity for residents to socialize and network with other residents in their community. We anticipate them having access to amenities such as a community room, a fitness center, and a wellness center. Also, the close proximity to many doctor's offices, pharmacy, and emergency facilities are ideal in the Churchland area of the city. Many of the seniors grew up in Churchland. They are familiar with the area. They have family and friends in Churchland, along with their existing doctors and dental offices. Many seniors develop mobility issues and other health-related issues that make it challenging for them to walk long distance or go up and down stairs. So the senior housing that we develop will also include features such as elevators, grab bars, and wheelchair accessibility to make their living environment more accessible and manageable. There are currently approximately 300 plus seniors on the authority's waiting list for the city of Portsmouth for housing. Our goal is to help seniors maintain their independence and quality of life. Land is a scarce resource in our city, so in order to meet the needs of such housing, we have been forced to look at more flexible and creative ways to meet our needs, including the increasing of density of which many we are accustomed to. One way of doing this and what we call in the housing industry is gentle density. Many single-family neighborhoods could easily yield more housing and more affordable housing if land use rules allow gentle increases in density for small-scale apartments and condominium buildings. A misconception is that dense housing will change the character of the neighborhood, increase traffic, or other issues. That is not the case, especially in senior housing. The authority did some community outreach and discussed the design with the existing members of the community. And based on our feedback and concern we received, and to the extent possible, we did make changes to the initial design of the plans, while also making it a valuable project. So I will now turn it over to Mrs. Scott Campbell, who's the architect assigned to this project, to give you more design elements.
So just some quick details about the project. It is a 3-story, 42-unit senior housing development. It consists of 38 one-bedrooms and 4 two-bedrooms. Those one-bedroom units are only 628 square feet, so they are designed for a single individual for the majority. We have provided the required number of parking spaces, 51 spaces for the 42 units. That takes a 20% reduction for senior housing. We've provided more than the required amount of open space on the property. And while the property is 4.92 acres, there's actually a significant amount of it that is wetlands and an RPA buffer. So we do have a limited area to place the building. We've done that in a way to kind of minimize impact as much as possible. Yes, the Woodbine neighborhood does have narrow road infrastructure. We will be improving Honeysuckle Drive to allow an entry and exit off of that road. We're also proposing to do a right turn only out onto Honeysuckle so that we're not encouraging any traffic increase into the neighborhood. So we're doing what we can to kind of mitigate some of these concerns that the neighbors have to the greatest extent possible. I'll say that it's a beautiful piece of property. You'll hear the neighbors speak to it, and we would like to maintain that landscape buffer to the greatest extent possible to kind of preserve that site and develop a beautiful senior housing development. I'm happy to answer any questions about the details of the development, and Elisa's available for any housing-related questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions from my colleagues on council? Sir, if you could please come back. And Ms. Winston, please, I have a question.
Sorry.
In the notes that I've read on this proposed development, It says that a significant portion of the site is encumbered by vegetative wetlands, abutting a tributary of the Elizabeth River, associated with a 100-foot resource protection area. I'm sure there's some Department of Environmental Quality issues with that. In addition, a regulated A8 flood zone. I don't know what all that means, but when I hear flood zone, I'm close to one. That's not a good sound for me. The developable area from 4.92 acres to 2.77 acres. So understanding what you're proposing here, how do you fit that? How would you fit that based on that information going from, it's almost cutting the land use in half?
Yeah, it's actually, and that's correct, the developable area calculation. I actually calculated it as 1.6, closer to 1.6 because of the flood zone designations. So you can see some of these, and the reason it is laid out the way it is that's probably the only place that it could fit. And then the reason we are going 3 stories is to minimize that footprint. So a smaller footprint means preserving more land, and that is how we were able to fit it within all of those constraints. We understand those challenges. We intentionally put it out of the flood zones. It is not in the buffer, RPA buffer, because it's not allowed to be. And then any stormwater treatment requirements will be handled underground, so captured, treated, and then meet city standards for development.
Any other questions from my colleagues? Thank you, ma'am and sir. Thank you. We do have a couple of speakers on this public hearing item. Our first speaker is Ms. Ellen Comstock.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Comstock, and I live at 2408 Sterling Point Drive, and I'm here to oppose the rezoning of these 4 lots at 5315 High Street West and Honeysuckle Lane from general residential to multifamily urban residential. I'm a lifelong resident of Sterling Point, having spent 60 of my 69 years living in the neighborhood just down southeast of Woodbine on Stearns Creek. I'm a semi-retired United Methodist minister, a church-endorsed advocate for creation justice, and a Portsmouth Wetlands Board member. I oppose this rezoning and apartment structure, first because it's inconsistent with the city's comprehensive plan and was voted for denial by the Planning Commission. The area of Churchland was annexed by Portsmouth in the 1960s. It's been suburban, not urban. It was farmland, divided and settled mostly by the workers of Norfolk Naval Shipyard and returning war veterans when it was Norfolk County and then briefly Chesapeake. They moved out of the densely populated areas like Craddock and Academy Park. So this proposed senior apartment complex more than doubles the amount of family units in the neighborhood. It changes both the character and the quality of life for the families that bought here under the current zoning and expectations of single-family residential zoning and suburban life with a maximum amount of tree canopy, wildlife, bird, mammal, and insect. And as been reported by Mr. Campbell, the site, while a little less than 5 acres, is only buildable on less than 2 acres. The density, 8.5 units as calculated per acre, is based on the total area, not on the buildable acreage. The reason the total acreage is not buildable is because it's within 100 feet of the wetlands marsh, the headwaters of Stearns Creek, and protected through the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act. That acreage is already inhabited by rabbits, fox, squirrel, possum, raccoon, mink, river otter on the bank edges. It includes nesting areas for osprey, heron, egret, and duck. The marsh serves as a nursery for shellfish, mussel, shrimp, oyster, and for fish, eel, and snakes. The density during occupancy of these proposed apartments and construction disturbance will increase lawn pesticide chemicals draining into the creek and increase the stormwater runoff, the major cause of water pollution in the Chesapeake Bay area, and decrease the current grade of the Elizabeth River, given through the Elizabeth River project, from it's currently a C. In comparison, the Lafayette River over in Norfolk has a B grade. Changing the density of human housing on this site changes the character and the quality of life for that approximately 70-year-old neighborhood, as well as for others on High Street. In addition to this proposal, 230-plus port apartments were approved 3 months ago, less than a mile from this site. This does not increase the quality of life for either current residents or proposed new ones in single-family or multifamily units. Speaking of quality of life, I'd like to address the big M, mosquitoes. This Woodbine site is very similar in proximity to salt marsh and insects, as is Churchland High School at the end of Cedar Lane. The mosquito problem at the school is epic and has been since it was built. My friend who taught horticulture there for 10 years talks about leaving her greenhouse wrapped in a hoodie and long pants and having to keep her hands over her face to get from her greenhouse into the school building without being bitten. She said it was barely tolerable after spraying, but mostly intolerable. And I'm sure every student you interview, as well as staff, can give you their own mosquito story. By the way, spraying kills both mosquitoes and their insect predators, dragonflies, damselflies, equally. In the ecosystem, all of them are food for birds and amphibians. The Stearns Creek Marsh encloses that property and is really not compatible with outdoor enjoyment for senior apartment living in a lovely patio space that's been designed. Mosquitoes and other insects are present all year long.
Our next speaker is Ms. Donna Biggs. If you would come forward and state your name and address, you will have 5 minutes.
My name is Donna Lee Biggs, and I live at 3104 Garland Drive in Portsmouth. I gave y'all paperwork last time, so you had that from last time, but I'll go on and say what I gotta say. This is a law that was initiated by Scott Campbell on behalf of the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority to rezone this area for 42 units senior living complex. Let's review how a representative of PRHA needed to know the role required of PRHA to preserve the history of Portsmouth. The first step is to look at the organizational structure of the city. See, it's we the people. Where is the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority connected to the order and operation of the city? Nowhere. The second step is to look at the boards and commission manual to understand what the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority's role is in the city. The manual reads, the PRHA plans and implements programs primarily in deteriorated neighborhoods or underutilized sections of the city. An executive director serves to execute the policy and decisions of the board. PRHA coordinates the operation of public housing, urban renewal activities, and conservation and rehabilitation district program activities in the city. We have reviewed the duties and responsibilities of PRHA. The board or authority has overstepped its duties and responsibilities by not following the role of the authority, as well as there is no oversight of this authority by the Economic Development Authority to prevent PRHA from spending $650 $600,000 of our money, which it has done to purchase this property. The people's money could have been used for an urban renewal activity to conserve 711 Crawford Street, which is off the coast of the southern branch of the Elizabeth River. PRHA would be applying its Conservation and Rehabilitation District program for the city in this resource protection area, as well as a resource management area. What I have presented to you is an example of the lack of the standards of operation in the city. Some resources are added to your file to assist with understanding the role of a representative of the people and how to communicate with the people for him or her to self-govern in his or her community. And the first step is to know the Bill of Rights. The second step is to know the police service areas or district of voting precincts in communication with your people. The third step is to know what the boards and commissions are doing for the people in the departments. The fourth step is to understand the hidden rules among classes in the city. The fifth step is to understand your management style by taking the inventory. The sixth step is to apply the inventory to the results of to understand your management style characteristics. And the seventh step is to take the leadership development class on authority with grace. And there you have it, the order of operation to allow the people to self-govern.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Cameron Robinette. Sir, if you would come forward and state your name and address, you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Council. My name is Cameron Robinette. I reside at 3005 Meredith Drive in Portsmouth, Virginia, the Woodbine neighborhood, which this development is proposed, 2 doors down from the development. For anyone that watched or read the minutes of the Planning Commission hearing, I'm going to be very redundant in my remarks here tonight. From the very beginning, this project has been met with significant resistance from everyone. First, with community hearings at the Churchland Public Library, in which no one within the Woodbine community or surrounding neighborhoods supported it. Despite some architectural changes to the plan, no one still endorsed it, to the point that on Wednesday, January 25th, the executive director of the PRHA spoke to me directly, in which he indicated the full intention of yanking this project from the plan, only to have it brought back after the fact, given the requirements made by his board of directors. Subsequent to that, compliments to Julie Chop from the Planning Commission, very thorough analysis as to why this project should be voted down. At the Planning Commission hearing, of the 6 members that were there, 5 of the 6 voted against. Every step of the way, the people have spoken. The traffic impact analysis that Mr. Campbell provided is significantly flawed. If you are familiar with this area, there are 3 roads that enter Woodbine: Garland, Laurel, and Honeysuckle. They all dead end to the creek. There is only one stoplight into our neighborhood. It is not on Honeysuckle. It is on Laurel. And one only needs to look one neighborhood over from us on Bon Secours Way in front of Carolwood Gardens to show that signs that say right turn only, or don't do this or don't do that, don't work. You all have folks set up out there right now stopping people despite signs that say no through traffic, because the lights on High Street have not been synchronized in quite some time. It is not possible architecturally to get honeysuckle to code while maintaining the existing landscape buffer that is shown here. It cannot be done. There has been no discussion as to potential property issues that might come up with my neighbors as well relative to additional roadways that they need. For those that don't know our neighborhood, it is extremely narrow to the point that most roads in our neighborhood, you cannot get 2 cars, standard size cars, down at one time. Honeysuckle is the biggest issue. We have a handshake agreement with the Waste Management Division with the city because those vehicles are not able to service our neighborhood picking up bulk trash, and we have to leave it in front of the Bidgood Cemetery that abuts my house. And now we're going to add additional emergency vehicles, city service vehicles, to accommodate another 42 units, and the only road improvements are going to be on Honeysuckle. Wholly insufficient. Everyone that was trying to go to Churchland is going to go out of that exit, go down Vine Street, take a right on Laurel, and take a left at the traffic light. Yet no roadway or improvements are called for outside of Honeysuckle. Lastly, I have, in my private business life, served as chairman of a multifamily development company here in the city of Portsmouth. I have offered free advice along with our land planners, our engineers, to sit down with PRHA, economic development, to find better uses,
Sir,
better land for this
complete your
project.
thought. Thank you. Once again, this is a public hearing. If anyone wishes to come and speak on this item, you can come forward. All you have to do is state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Tom Knowles. My wife and I live at 3108 Honeysuckle Lane in the city of Portsmouth. We are directly across Honeysuckle Lane from the subject property. We've lived at that address for 20 years. We bought the property because of the neighborhood. The neighborhood is a terrific neighborhood, probably 70 years old at least. It's stable. There's very little turnover in our neighborhood. Usually when a house comes on the market, it's because some owner, an elderly person has passed away and the house is sold. And I'd like to say, just so we're perfectly clear, that 5315 High Street, the house in question that's on the plan to be torn down if this rezoning is allowed, is part of our Woodbine neighborhood, and it's pretty close probably to the first house in our Woodbine neighborhood. The neighborhood itself has a very rural feeling to it, which is hard to find in a city the size of Portsmouth. My wife and I oppose this rezoning application. We feel that it will, if passed, completely destroy the character of the Woodbine neighborhood. An proposed apartment building is not at all compatible with the houses in Woodbine and the surrounding neighborhoods of Sweetbriar and Siesta Gardens. So what we have here is a small area where PRHA is requesting a change in the zoning to multifamily, where north, east, south, and west literally are single-family homes and occupied by single families all around it. It would indeed be an island of a different zoning. And speaking truthfully, I never would have purchased this property. I know my wife agrees with that. had we had a apartment building been across the street from where I'm living. And we are more immediately impacted probably than some of the folks in the neighborhood, because the ingress and egress for this proposed project is directly across the street from my house. And you heard Mr. Robinette say, and it's in the literature, that the city is going to require that Honeysuckle Lane be increased in size to 2 full lanes, 1 in each direction. It'll be the only road in our neighborhood that is of full size, full lane in each direction. And at one end, it terminates at High Street. At the other end, which is probably 100 yards away, it's going to terminate at Vine. No changes are proposed for Vine or any of the other streets in the neighborhood. The project is incompatible, as has already been said. I don't want to beat a dead horse to death, but we know it doesn't comply with the comprehensive plan that the Planning Commission has put forward. 42 units are proposed, as you've heard, and I would submit to you that that translates immediately to 42 cars, if not more, that will be utilizing the entrance and exit to this apartment complex. And I know this is always a sensitive subject, but I can't help but feel with the ingress and egress in front of my house and the apartment complex on the land in front of my house, that it's going to affect the value of my property. I acknowledge the need for senior housing, but to set that senior housing down in the middle of 4 single-family residential neighborhoods makes no sense at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. If you wish to come and speak on this public hearing matter, you're not required to have signed up. You can come and speak, and you will have 5 minutes. State your name and address.
Robert Watkins, 3127 Sterling Way. Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, members of council, citizens of Portsmouth. I don't want to go and repeat what's already been said, but I would like to accentuate the fact that the 192 plus 40 apartments that are going in, and that construction is scheduled to start in the early fall. They're at the former Kroger site, will not only add to traffic, as Mr. Robinette said, on Bon Secours Way, but also impact pedestrian traffic. The only crosswalks anywhere in that particular area of Churchland is at High Street and Tire Neck. There's no other. So if people are going to be living in apartments, how are they going to possibly walk there? Because there's no safe way for them to cross. There are ramps across the medians, but there's no crosswalk, no signals crosswalk. I will also say that when this was developed, engineering had recommended that the access to the property that they're proposing be at the Dogwood Light intersection. But that was completely ignored because then you couldn't fit that structure into that footprint. There's no way. But that would have been the ideal situation to place it and provide safe access on and off the property. Bus stop. During the planning meeting, there was no bus stop anywhere close to this particular site. There is one about, well, just north of Garland. It's stop number 1704. But after the planning meeting, about 3 weeks later, a bus stop appeared across the street from this property. But it's marked temporary. So I'm just wondering, why is it temporary now? But that's neither here nor there. Again, I appreciate the time to listen to my comments and concerns, and I am also opposed to this project and would, like to see some additional improvements in the area of Churchland from Tire Neck up with regards to pedestrian safety and traffic improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. If you wish to come and speak on this public hearing item, you will have 5 minutes. State your name and address.
Star Howell. I live in Cavalier Manor. I just wanted to say Portsmouth is booming with economic development and businesses that are getting employees at really great rates for the businesses, right? But not so great when you're the employee having to live and pay taxes in the highest city with the highest property taxes, but also the highest rate of unemployment and underemployment. And we can look at the country as a whole, but specifically in Portsmouth, the mental health crisis.
Ma'am, excuse me.
I'm getting to it.
You have to speak specifically to the public hearing item in order to speak on this item.
I understand.
And the public hearing item has been stated. It is the project that's being proposed in the neighborhood. If you are not speaking...
It's housing, right?
Ma'am, if you are not speaking to that public hearing item, then you will have to take your seat.
Well, if you would have let me continue, I would have gotten to it. When the housing crisis continues as it has for decades, where are people going to go? Where are they going to live? The Permit and Planning Commission is approving all of these economic development projects, but no housing projects. It seems like the people that make a lot of money in business off of Portsmouth doesn't care about the people that make their businesses run. So I support housing that's affordable for the people that make the businesses run in the city.
Thank you, ma'am. This is a public hearing. Anyone who wishes to come and speak on this particular item, you can come forward, state your name and address on this particular item. You will have 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Knowles. I live at 3108 Honeysuckle Lane. My husband is Tom Knowles, who spoke before. We live directly across from where this project is being proposed. And I have just a few points. Mr. Campbell said Honeysuckle would be improved. He also said the buffer in the previous shot between our house and the apartment complex would be saved. Well, unless they take 10 feet of my yard, that is absolutely not possible. There's no room to improve Honeysuckle and keep the buffer. It's just not possible. But let me try and say this in a gentle way. Senior housing. Senior housing is, I think, 57 years is the minimum. One person per unit has to be 57 years old. That's it. Anyone else that lives in each unit can be under 57. I'm thinking a few of y'all are at least 57 and you still drive, right? Your company still drives. They have allowed 52 parking spaces for this complex, 42 units. Where are the remainder of the cars going to park? They're going to park on Honeysuckle. They're going to park on Van. They're going to park on Laurel. There's nowhere to park because, like Mr. Robinette said, 2 cars cannot pass one another. We just take turns. And that's part of the charm of our neighborhood. That's why we love it. One more point, and this is kind of selfish. My husband's right. We would not have purchased a house directly across the street from an apartment building. An apartment building in Portsmouth, an apartment building in Palm Beach. We wouldn't have done it. We purchased the house for the charm of the neighborhood. The charm is going to be gone with a 3-story building right in front of my dining room table, lights on a parking lot all night long, and traffic nonstop. I am opposed to the project. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, if you would come forward, state your name and address, you will have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Ed Blaine. I'm the Executive Director for the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority. Also, I live at 3166 Sterling Way in Churchland, which is a few blocks from where we are proposing the site. I heard conversation about traffic congestion. That's a buzzword to say, well, certain people, we don't want to live in a neighborhood. That's what traffic congestion means. What it means is people who are low income, African American, people of color. Traffic congestion means we don't want those folks in our neighborhood. I heard another buzzword is NIMBY, which means, yeah, we want affordable housing, but not in my backyard. That's NIMSB. As you look up in the Federal Register, that's what you would see. Normally you hear another buzzword underlined is like people, but it means those people. Those people mean people of certain color and income. Buzzwords. I live in Churchland, 3166 Sterling Way. Next to me, there's a 200-unit apartment complex going to where I can look up my window and see. But I'm not opposed to it because I know you need affordable housing in the community for the community to grow. I truly understand that. I understand also, it was mentioned that you need to make a right turn on High Street. In the community where I live at, which is a senior citizen community, 66 units, everybody there is probably 60 and older, 65 and older. There is no turn at High Street saying right turn only. So why all of a sudden it got to be a right turn only for people of low income who can still get out? I don't understand that. I also heard talking about value of the home. It has been shown on a national level when the senior buildings are built, senior community built next to homes, it does not decrease the value of the property. In fact, it helps to enhance the value of the property because normally most of the people who move into those units are folks who live in that community or members of the families of that particular community who are seniors. The age for this building would be 62 years and older. It would, I don't know where the 50 came from, be 62 and older. So I'm asking you, who was appointed as council members, for everybody in the city of Portsmouth, not just a few, to do the right thing and vote for this to be built, because it's going to serve all the citizens of Portsmouth. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other speakers who wish to come and speak on this item? If you wish to come and speak on this public hearing item, state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes.
My name is Garrett Lee Knuckles. I reside at 1219 Highland Avenue. I've done some work in the Woodbine area. I'm a contractor, so I can pretty much agree to what everyone's testified. It's a small neighborhood. It's not really worth it. The marshland there is extremely small. However, that's not the question I have. I actually have a question for the applicant, because unfortunately there's a population crisis developing in the U.S. It's pretty much all over the civilized world. Senior citizens are beginning to outnumber the younger classes, making the populations top-heavy. They predict our collapse will come within 30 to 40 years. So what's this structure going to serve beyond that? It's just a massive thing in the middle of a neighborhood for senior citizens when the population's going to decrease in less than half a century. Makes no sense. Also, if he could address that issue. But I also have a recommendation. If this is some low-income housing project, there is a large property at the corner of Frederick and Portsmouth Boulevard. It looks like an old recreation center, busted out windows, something like that. There's ball courts all over the property, large court area. Massive property. I see vagrants moving in and out of the abandoned structure all the time. Maybe it would be a good area as it's off the Brighton and Craddock areas, actual low-income territory. Just an idea.
Thank you, sir. Once again, this is a public hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak on this item, if you will come forward, state your name and address, you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and other neighbors. I'm Mark Godildy-Gietrowski. You can reach me at P.O. Box 50141, Portsmouth, Virginia. So those of you who did your homework and read the packet know that I spoke at the Planning Commission, and some of my comments will probably be the same as what you read. There's a certain amount of repetition that's useful. I would like to emphasize the fact that the Woodbine Farms neighborhood is unique in my experience in Portsmouth, in that during a number of years attending Planning Commission and City Council meetings, it's the first one I have seen designated as early suburban in character. And what that means to me is that this neighborhood was the suburbs before anybody knew what a suburb was. So it is pretty much a rural area that has been somewhat urbanized because of the locale in which it resides. Remember, it was part of Norfolk County back in the early 60s, and it still has a lot of that character, as many other neighborhoods in Portsmouth do. So it is not ideal for an urban sort of use, which this multifamily development would be. Furthermore, the physical location of this property and the planned development is like driving a wedge into the neighborhood. Those folks who find, as some speakers have said, they would not have moved there if they had expected this kind of development to occur there. Some folks who live there may be induced to leave by the presence of this development. And so then you have a domino effect as the confidence in the viability of the neighborhood, the confidence that the neighborhood is no longer going to be what people signed up for when they moved in. You may have a rapid sell-off, and then you may have more development of this type because the precedent will have been set. Portsmouth's strength is that it is a community of many different communities, each of them unique. We have 5 historic neighborhoods at present. Each one is distinctive, and each one has its charm, and it provides an attraction to people who come from outside the area and don't want the sameness of some of the really suburban neighbors that we coexist with in this area. We have charm that is elusive. We have a traditional downtown area that is a dying breed. So we are undercutting our ability to attract people to Portsmouth if we make it look like suburb anywhere in the USA. I believe you have a responsibility to respect the zoning decision that was made, to respect the will of the people who live in that neighborhood, who moved there because of its character. And if you do this to Woodbine Farms, you could do it to Sterling Point, Green Acres, Pinehurst, Craddock. You could do it anywhere in the city. There are areas that are better suited for multifamily, just in terms of walkability and access to public transportation. Those are not things that are easily available in this area. So I urge you to turn this down. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Once again, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this public hearing item, if you would come forward and state your name and address, you will have 5 minutes. Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. We are in need of a motion and a second. We are in need of a motion and a second, and then we will entertain speakers.
Mr. Mayor, I move to deny this rezoning request.
I second that.
Is there any discussion? Councilman Hugo, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So on the one hand, I agree that we need affordable housing for seniors, but as some of the speakers have pointed out, there's a right way to do it, and in this case, I think the planning staff and the planning commission recommending denial, I think they got it right. In our package, there are 4 traffic planning concerns that haven't been addressed with this plan, and another 7 engineering concerns that haven't been addressed in the plan. Some of those have been spoken to by some of the neighbors tonight, including the issue with Honeysuckle Lane right-of-way, Honeysuckle Lane width, the lack of sidewalks and pedestrian right-of-ways in that area. What wasn't mentioned was the proposed plan doesn't have space for stormwater management facilities, and as the applicant mentioned, they struggled to fit things into the footprint, and the design of what they've proposed is specifically tailored to the footprint. So the fact that their footprint now has consumed what may be used for stormwater management leaves a big hole in the plan, in my opinion. And so for all those reasons, I think denying the request and supporting the outcome of the planning staff and the planning commission are the right things to do. Thank you.
Are there any other discussions amongst my colleagues on council? Seeing none, we have a motion. Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I'm a senior. I would probably fit very well in a senior facility at some point in time, but I would not approve this item. It's perhaps a good project, but in a very, very wrong location. It's just not a good fit. Infrastructure, environmental concerns, part of it. The citizens did a terrific job in laying out the reasons why the project should not go forward. Unfortunately, Mr. Bland did not do a good job in being a proponent of the project. I would hope that he would go back and get with his board and find a proper location for the senior facility. But I'll be voting no.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion and a second. I would ask my colleagues to vote electronically. I'm trying to figure out, is yes or no vote here?
This item is denied 7-0.
That was a lot of talking, I'm sorry.
As
Even
stated
the mayor is slow
previously,
sometimes.
council members, you do not have to deliberate on item D.
We have concluded our public hearing items for this agenda. We are now moving to the city manager's report. And we will begin with item 23-205. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance where considering at this time?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting Four for Life program funds in the amount of $75,274.16 from the Virginia Department of Health, Office of Emergency Medical Services, and appropriating said funds to the FY 2023 Grants Fund for use by the Department of Fire, Rescue, and Emergency Services for EMS training, equipment, and supplies.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, we're in need of a motion and a second.
Move adoption.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Madam Clerk, item 23-206, would you please read the ordinance we are considering for this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting Kids Meals Program funding in the amount of $399,938 from the Virginia Department of Education and appropriating said amount in the FY 2023 Grants Fund for use by the Department of Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we do have a speaker, Ms. Donna Biggs. Ma'am, if you would come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Do I have to keep saying my name and address?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Donna Biggs,
Thank you.
3104 Garland Drive, Portsmouth. Agenda item 23206 is a law from the Department of Education for a Kids Meals Program for use by the Department of Parks and Recreation. Where is the budget for kids' meals? There is no before and after school program funding in the budget. Why is there a kids' meal program in Portsmouth? We have all these churches in Portsmouth. How come the churches aren't opening its doors for the day-to-day operation for the youth in its communities? Is the federal government controlling the churches? This is why our tax rates in Portsmouth are so high. The federal government is going to tax us to provide living arrangements for whatever it wants to do. After all, the 14th Amendment makes all the people federal citizens. I want to see the paperwork that asks for this funding. If I don't get it, then of course I am a subject to the kings and queens of the federal government and don't need to know anything. No more self-government in Portsmouth.
Thank you, ma'am. We are now moving to item 23-207. And Madam Clerk, would you please? I'm sorry, we need to vote. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Move adoption.
Second.
Okay, guys, keep me straight. Is there any discussion? Would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
We now come to item 23-207. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this option?
Yes.
This ordinance.
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting a grant in the amount of $602,169 from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services and appropriating said funds in the FY 2023 Grants Fund to provide funding to operate local probation and pretrial services in the city of Portsmouth.
Thank you, ma'am. We do have a speaker for this item. And once again, it's Ms. Donna Biggs. Ma'am, if you would come forward, state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Donna Biggs, and I live at 3104 Garland Drive. 23-207 is a law from the Virginia Department of Criminal Services to provide funding for the local probation and pretrial services. How come the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services didn't follow the Comprehensive Community Corrections Act and the Pretrial Services Act of the Code of Virginia as amended? The Community Criminal Justice Board is responsible for the following: advise on the development and operation of local pretrial services and community-based probation services pursuant to the Code of Virginia for use by the courts in averting offenders from local correctional facility placement. 2, review the submission of all criminal justice grants, regardless of the source of funding. And 3, facilitates local involvement and flexibility in responding to the problem of crime in its communities. There was a Community Criminal Justice Board meeting on the 4th Thursday of April, the 27th, and the meeting did not have a quorum. Here is another example of the failure of our city to have any kind of order of operation to manage the people's money, but getting money to spend without the people's knowledge or consent. The city does not focus on the people's needs. It focuses on how to get money from the government at the taxpayer's expense. Taxation without representation.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, we are in need of a motion and a second.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Any additional discussion? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Item 23-208. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance we are considering for this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting Shelter Plus care funds in the amount of $569,441 from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and appropriating said amount in the FY 2023 Behavioral Health Care Services Fund to provide housing and supportive services for the chronically homeless.
Thank you, ma'am. And we do have a speaker for this item, Ms. Donna Biggs. Ma'am, if you would come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Donna Biggs, and I live at 3104 Garland Drive. 23-208 is a law accepting Shelter Plus Care funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and appropriating the funds to the Behavioral Health Care Services Fund for housing and supportive services for the chronically homeless. How come the Shelter Plus Care program is in the Department of Behavioral Health Care Services? In the budget book, under the Community and Economic Development, there's a department called Planning. The department's mission is to engage Portsmouth residents to envision and plan a highly desirable and livable city, and then to implement that vision through the wise use of land, resources, and related regulatory requirements with the ultimate goal of ensuring a high quality of life. In pursuit of this mission, the Planning Department's primary responsibility center around 8 primary function areas, one being the community planning and development with funding for the Community Development Block Grant and the Home Program. The Department of Housing and Urban Development is a federal agency. The city has a manager of funding from the federal government in the Planning Department. All funding from the federal government needs to come through the manager for housing, not the Department of Behavioral Health Care Services or the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, we are in need of a motion and a second.
Motion to approve. Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
We've now come to item 23-209. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting developmental disability residential support funds in the amount of $27,000 from the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services and appropriating said funds in the FY 2023 Behavioral Health Care Service Fund to provide residential support for individuals diagnosed with an intellectual or developmental disability.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, We're in need of a motion and a second.
Move for adoption.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Electronic vote.
It's electronic.
Oh. Would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you, ma'am. We've now come to new business. Item 23-210, boards and commissions. Councilman Moody, do we have?
We have no appointments to announce tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. We have now come to item 23-211, items submitted by council members. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting a grant in the amount of $1,365,353 from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services and appropriating said funds in the FY 2023 Grants Fund to provide funding to the Portsmouth Sheriff's Office for the salaries and benefits of 18 full-time school resource officers.
Thank you, ma'am. We do have a registered speaker for this item. It's Ms. Donna Biggs. And ma'am, if you would come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
I need somebody to volunteer. I gave you my speaking.
You need someone to, oh, you need the information? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm a visual learner.
Yes, ma'am.
That's 8. I need 11. You need 11. No, it's right. It's written. You don't have, I don't have? You don't have 2011?
Right here.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, sir. My name is Donna Lee Biggs, and I live at 3104 Garland Drive. 23-2011 is a law to accept funding in the amount of $1,365,353 from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services for salaries and benefits for 18 full-time school resource officers. How much funding will be allotted to one full-time school resource officer? Let's divide 18 into that $1,365,353. What will the salary and benefit for each one? $75,852.94 per school resource officer per year. How much do the regular deputies in the sheriff's office earn each year? In the budget book for the sheriff's office, the total expenditure for the year for 157 employees equals $9,342,816. Will you divide that by 157, you get $59,508.38. The school resource officers will earn $16,344.56. More money a year in salary and benefits than the deputies who have a base salary of $42,000 a year. Where is the salary scale? Where is the step scale? The other issue is talked about in the 23-207 law from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services to provide $602,169 funding for the local probation and pretrial services. Is this money going to salaries and benefits for the deputies? Both of these funds from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services weren't processed through the Community Criminal Justice Board to evaluate if there is justice involved with the salaries and benefits of all the deputies working for the sheriff's office.
Thank you, ma'am. We are in need of a motion and a second.
Move. Second.
Is there any additional discussion amongst my colleagues on council? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any other items to be submitted by council at this time? Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move to add an item to the agenda regarding the retaining and engaging of a search firm to assist council in the hiring of a city manager.
So we're going to add an item to the agenda. Do we have a second to add an item to the agenda?
Second.
Please vote electronically to add the item to the agenda. Now we need, go ahead, ma'am.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Right, but now we need to vote on the item. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. So we have an item on the agenda to begin the process of working with a search firm in the process of hiring our next city manager. Is there a motion and a second? Okay, Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
I move that the city council retain and engage a search firm to assist council in the hiring of a city manager.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion? Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to vote yes in the spirit of, this council being in one body and the realization that the votes aren't there to make a decision on the city manager tonight. I will stick by what I said at the last meeting, that I support Ms. Terry, and I'm very confident that she will, at the end of the day, after the expenditure of $20-some thousand of taxpayer funds, that she will come out on top.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor Lucas Burke.
Thank you, Mayor. We did hear a lot of discussion on our special call meeting, and there were 3 members of council who were adamant about moving forward with the appointment of Ms. Mimi Terry as our permanent city manager. We all believe that she has done a great job, and the comments that were quoted by me in the paper was that if we seek a search firm, there's going to be nobody better in the whole world, but that's not what I said, that's not what I meant. What I stated was that Ms. Mimi Terry has the experience. She's a Portsmouth resident. She's known throughout the city. She's known throughout the citizens here in the city. So I know that if we do a search, we're going to find candidates who will be comparable to what we have seen Ms. Mimi Terry display over the last 6 months. But in the spirit of us being a unified council and not being a body that is going to tear up the city with the decision, we have decided that we're going to go forth with a unified front. So my vote will be to continue with the process, that we hire a search firm, and the hopes that Ms. Mimi Terry will also apply with that, move forward with a search firm.
Thank you, ma'am. And I just want to say, as the chair and as your elected mayor, when we go through these types of processes and we have a discussion in the representative government, which we have in our country and in our state and in our city, it is important that we respect the right of the majority, even though we may not agree. It's not always an opportunity for us to agree. But what I want to state publicly on behalf of our interim city manager, we have a consummate professional who has worked and earned her role to serve in the role as a city manager for the city of Portsmouth. I do not need to say any more than that, and she fully understands and knows that she has my support in that effort. Nevertheless, the body has spoken, and one of our council members indicated that we need to be unified. And that's true, because at the end of the day, we don't work for us as individuals. We work for the citizens of Portsmouth and what's in the best interest of Portsmouth. And I too believe after all is said and done, our consummate professional will once again stand out front tall. And so we'll look forward to moving the process forward. We will keep the public informed as we go forward. Thank you. Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make it clear to the public that this is about process, not performance. I was elected to the school board back in 2002, and one of the first things we had to do was hire a superintendent. In that process of hiring the superintendent, there was a violation of the process by school board members, and I voted against hiring Dr. Stuckwich. It had nothing to do with his performance. It was purely about the process. And so it's the same thing here, that it's purely about the process. Whoever the city manager will be, it will be about the policies that this council will move forward with and the direction that city manager will lead us. So just want to make it clear that it is purely about the process.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Tillage, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. And I also want to reiterate that, as I mentioned last week, this is not a referendum on anyone. It's unfortunate that it's become a personal situation. And it's never it was never intended to be that. We, as I mentioned before, we promised a process, and I'm glad that we are working together as a team to be able to go in that direction of ensuring that the best leadership is chosen. And as mentioned, that leadership could be Ms. Terry. And so I'm looking forward to this process, and I commend Ms. Terry for the great work that she has done to this point, and I hope that she will continue to go above and beyond to make sure that our city is positioned in a really good position for us to be able to achieve what needs to be achieved. So, thank you.
Thank you, sirs. And so we have a motion and a second. I would ask all my colleagues to please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Are there any, Dr. Whitaker, sir, I was just getting ready to ask, are there any other items to submit? But go ahead, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As you know, in our earlier session, we had a presentation from Ms. Sherry Neal, and Councilman Tillage raised an issue which she said was time was of essence, and that was in regards to a legislative policy committee. And so I moved to add an item to the agenda regarding the creation of a City Council Legislative Policy Committee.
Okay, Vice Mayor Lucasberg, ma'am, you second? Okay. We have a motion and a second, but we also have speakers. So, Mr. Hugo, are you wanting to speak? Okay. One of the things that I will say about that, I think that's a great recommendation, but we need to look at the process as it relates to that as well. And the Personnel Committee really hasn't had the time to do that. There may be some requirements also to allow for citizens to participate in this particular committee. I'm not aware of there being any prohibitions, but I think it's important that we look how we do it going forward. No one is in disagreement with it, but I think we need to move the process forward, and I do recommend that we go in that regard, but doing it the right way, I think is appropriate as well. So, Councilman Barnes, sir, you have the floor.
I wanted to ask the attorney, is there any legal ramifications from getting the citizens to speak on this issue or anything?
Okay, first, we're just at adding the item to the agenda. So we haven't officially put the item onto the agenda. And so can we hold, I can answer your question quickly now, which is no. What we're talking about is a liaison position. We're not creating a new board or commission unless the proponent has a dispute with that. This is just a liaison position amongst council, and so there would be no input from citizens as a result. One more. The clerk wanted me to clarify that with respect to the motion, there will be input. We have to open the item up to the floor for input and discussion for the item being added, but not for the purpose of the liaison position, if that's clear. Does everybody understand that? So right now, we are still at just adding the item. So if the mayor has no further discussion on adding the item, then we need to vote, and then the motion for the item, and then we can open up for those discussions.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, so I would ask my colleagues to vote electronically. Could you all please vote electronically again?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Now we are in need of a motion and a second to open the item up for this.
Motion to approve.
Council members, we are now in need of what your motion is.
Exactly, that's what I was, yes, we need a motion on what the item is.
I have a request to speak, Mr. Mayor.
Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor.
Yes. I move that the City Council create a legislative policy committee and appoint Vice Mayor Lisa Lucas Burke and Councilman Vernon Tillage as members with reappointment of council members during the regular council reorganizational meeting.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
I would ask that, yes, Madam
Council
Clerk.
members, I just want to be clear. Are you creating a committee, or are you just creating liaisons?
It's a committee, just like we normally have with our other committees that council members serve on.
Liaison. So
This
basically,
would be a liaison.
yeah, so you'd have two
This
liaisons.
this is just adding liaisons
Yes.
Okay.
to the legislative.
Well, let me amend that language then. I move that the city council create a legislative policy liaison and appoint Vice Mayor Lisa Lucas Burke and Councilman Vernon Tillage as the liaisons.
Second.
Thank
We
you.
have a motion and a second. I would ask my colleagues to all vote electronically, please.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you all to my colleagues. Are there any additional items submitted by council? Councilman Barnes, so you have the floor.
I'm gonna be brief. I wanted to give a big shout out to kid Jaden Brown. He's an 11-year-old superstar in the city of Portsmouth. He had a football camp the other day for the youth of Portsmouth. 11-year-old had a football camp for the children in Portsmouth. I'm gonna say that one more time. 11-year-old kid had a free football camp, free food and everything for the children in the city of Portsmouth. So I wanted to give him a big shout out for that. Yeah, give him a round of applause. And that is all I wanted to say.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Hugel, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So my shout out is to the Portsmouth Public Schools Special Education Advisory Committee and the special education staff who hosted a special education resources fair at S.H. Clark Academy back on the first Saturday of June the 3rd. I had a chance to attend. There were about a dozen and a half nonprofits and other folks, Parks and Recs folks and school system folks who were in attendance, sharing services and opportunities available to our kids. Unfortunately, from my perspective, the turnout was a little bit disappointing because There was so much goodness in that room that's available for our people who need that kind of help. And so this is the first time they've done it. It's the first annual. And for those of you who have children who are in need of assistance, I commend you to reach out and connect with Ms. Shirley Edwards and Ms. Glory Byrne, both of whom are co-chairs of the Special Education Advisory Committee. They're the folks who pulled this event together and have the information available regarding who was there and what they had to offer. So if you have kids who need help, there's opportunity out there, and it's a really awesome opportunity. So I want to thank them specifically for taking a Saturday morning and getting those folks together to share what they're able to do to help our kids. Thanks, sir.
Can you repeat those names again, please?
Yes, it's Ms. Shirley Edwards and Mrs. Glory Byrne, B-U-Y-R-N. They're the Special Education Advisory Committee co-chairs.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Vice Mayor Lucas Burke.
Thank you,
Vice Mayor
Mayor.
Lucas Burke.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I want to give you some information about Juneteenth as a federal holiday in the United States commemorating the emancipation of the enslaved African Americans, deriving its name from combining June and 19th. It's celebrated on the anniversary of the order issued by Major General Gordon Granger on June 19th, 1865. I believe it's also our Councilman Dr. Whitaker's birthday. And it was a day that they proclaimed freedom for slaves in Texas. Originating in Galveston, Juneteenth has since been observed annually in various parts of the United States, often broadly celebrating African American culture. The day was first recognized as a federal holiday in 2021. That was when President Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law after the efforts of Lula Briggs, Galloway, Opal Lee, and others. And on this coming Sunday, June 18th, there will be a festival held at High Street Landing in Portsmouth in partnership with the City of Portsmouth and the Urban League of Hampton Roads. There'll be music, live art, vendors, step show, kids corner, entertainments, including a headliner by Montel Jordan and 702. So if you're free and you're available and if you want to do something or learn more about this cultural, bring your lawn chairs out on Sunday. It'll be held from 1 to 9 at High Street Landing in Portsmouth.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Tillage, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Over the past 2 weeks, I've had the opportunity to attend a few different ceremonies. Number one being the 2023 Valor Awards hosted by the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce. This year we had, I believe, 4 individuals with the police department here in Portsmouth that were honored and recognized for their great achievements, going above and beyond the call of duty. And so I just want to take a time to recognize those individuals and to applaud them for their hard work and the dedication that they do to ensure the safety of our city. So we can just take the time to recognize them. I would greatly appreciate that. Second is the Portsmouth Public Schools Retirement Banquet, which was held last week. And this year we had a combined over 750 years of experience of individuals who have gone through our school division as teachers, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, janitors, and who have dedicated their lives to bettering our education system here in the city of Portsmouth. And so it was great to see many of my former teachers, custodians, bus drivers, cafeteria ladies who are now able to step into that next chapter of life called retirement. And so I hope that they will enjoy retirement. And for the ones that are able to, we encourage you to come on back to Portsmouth Public Schools and take advantage of the VRS opportunity. And then also there was one lady who gave over 50 years. She served 50 years in Portsmouth Public Schools. She started at the age of 18 years old. And so to keep one job for 50 years, I think it is phenomenal, and I think it speaks to our educational system, and I think it speaks to the culture in which we have tried to provide throughout the years of ensuring good quality education. And so I just want to take the time to recognize our police, but also our retired education professionals. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Barnes, sir, you have the floor.
So I was so excited last time, I forgot to mention a couple of other things. Today I attended the senior station's Elderly Appreciations Day. They told me that the mayor did stop by. When I was there, I think he missed all the partying that was going on because they was dancing and just having a great time. I told them that they're causing so much of a ruckus, I'm gonna have to make sure we get security there next time. I attended the Pride Festival 2 weeks ago. It was a great turnout, very good for the city. This is the second annual Pride Festival. I'm excited for it to continue to go on. That same day, I also went to Brighton Rock AME Zion Church with Pastor Tanya Paz. They were having a community health and resource fair. Great turnout, had a lot of different resources for the neighbors, those that, all of the citizens of Portsmouth actually. And then my last shout out goes to Portsmouth Public Schools 2023 graduates. This weekend, they will be graduating from IC Norcom, Churchland High School, and Manor High School. So we definitely want to give a big shout out to them as they transition into better things in their lives and continue to make Portsmouth proud and better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
And speaking of shout-outs, shout out to Mayor Glover for being appointed to the VML Finance Policy Committee we learned this week. So congratulations, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, Mayor, two things. I just want to follow up on Vice Mayor Lucas Burke and the Juneteenth information, as well as my birthday that she mentioned. And I want to share this particularly because we have a lot of young folks who look at our council meetings, and I would like to just challenge them. As you know, this is a federal holiday now, and the whole Juneteenth story is taking on a lot of mythical proportion, and the truth of it is being sort of washed over. What we have been told is that those Africans who were enslaved in Texas, that it was given to them by General Granger, that the Civil War was over and that they had been freed. Persons such as a friend of mine, we were in school together, Dr. Greg Carr, who is the former chair of Africana Studies at Howard University, Dr. Gerald Horn, who is there at the University of Houston. They've done quite more research on this and come to find out it wasn't through that announcement by Granger that those enslaved Africans found out that the Civil War was over and they were free. What research is actually showing was that as the South was losing the Civil War, that those plantation owners were shifting their slaves out west. And those slaves who were going out west, such as Texas, were informing those slaves who were there in Texas that the war was over. You all no longer slaves. However, it was because of the resistance of those plantation owners that kept them enslaved. So it wasn't this superhero who comes in, Granger, and lets the slaves know. It was actually their own folks who told them that they were free. And also those black Union soldiers that were coming into Texas were also informing them of that. So I just want to put that out there because it's a lot of myth. And also Juneteenth is more of a commemoration because, as we know, everyone was not free. It wasn't until the 13th Amendment in which the slaves were free. So I just wanted to share that. My second is that I would like to...
Wait, Dr. Whitaker,
yeah.
I need to say a few things, then I'll go
Okay.
back to you. Is that
All
okay?
right. Yes, sir.
Okay, couple of things I wanted to add on the items submitted by council to kind of just add to what Mr. Councilman Tillage said about the Valor Awards. there were several of our police officers that received awards, and I wanted to take a moment to name those individuals. Councilman Hugo and Councilman Tillage were both there with me, but the life-saving awards went to Officer Randy Pierce of the Portsmouth Police Department. You see Officer Pierce, certainly congratulate him on that life-saving award. The Investigative Merit Awards went to Detective William Baker, Detective Ethan Bloodworth, Detective Gino Jackson, and Detective Mike Senescauchi. So all those public servants, officers were awardees in the Valor Awards. The other thing is, you all may be looking at me on my lapel, you see this purple ribbon. Well, once again, Councilman Barnes showed up and the party was going on. When I came, they hadn't started the party. And to the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which was also the Elder Appreciation Day at the senior station. The color was purple. And I want to thank some other folks who really participated in making this a wonderful event. And I want to stress to everybody in the audience, in the city of Portsmouth, we had 320 incidents of elder abuse just last year. That's 320 too many. So I want to make everyone aware that elder abuse is real, and if you should see elder abuse or know about it, please refer to the proper authorities and get those folks help. The senior station, Dolores Lane, Enoch Baptist Church, Stephen Carter with his fitness program, DJ George James, Portsmouth Health Department, Portsmouth Department of Social Services, Swing, Phi Swing, and Alpha Kappa Alpha. All of those folks helped to make that a wonderful and enjoyable event. Also, Sunset Thursday, our music event that is free to all, is beginning, will open up on the 15th, that's Thursday. The new location is at Festival Park. The band will be Soul Intent, and the party will start at 6:00 p.m. We hope you all can come out and dance and sing along with Soul Intent. Our very own LaVonda Graham Williams, city attorney, was chosen as for the Southampton Roads Bar Award for 2022 and 2023. Let's give her a round of applause. Another thing, our group that does a lot of work in the community with gun violence reduction, Give Back to the Block, is Mr. Daryl Redmond in the audience? Could you come forward, sir? Mr. Redmond and his organization have been working very close with the city and our police department to reduce gun violence and give our children hope in the city of Portsmouth. And he and his organization were the recipients of the Frontline Worker, actually the Gun Violence Reduction Award that was presented by Cities United. He was recognized as a frontline worker, and there were only 25 that were selected in the nation, sir, for this prestigious honor. And so on behalf of the Portsmouth City Council, and I would say the citizens of the city of Portsmouth, we applaud you in your efforts of your organization in helping to reduce gun violence in the city of Portsmouth. Thank you, sir. Did you want to say something, sir?
I thank y'all for the opportunity. I thank y'all for being able to entrusting in us to do the work that we do. Like I say, it takes a ecosystem, a strategic approach. We know that we still got a lot more work to do, but to be able to get more training and get more education on how we can attack this violence in our community as a holistic approach is always good, and the war don't mean nothing because we still losing people every single day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And last but certainly, no, you can have a seat. Last but certainly not least, this Sunday is Father's Day. So on behalf of the Portsmouth City Council, I want to make sure that all them ladies know that it's Father's Day and that they treat us very well on Father's Day. Thank you very much. But thank you to all the dads. Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, I do have a follow-up on the report that was submitted by our assessor pertaining to the Elizabeth Manor Golf Course, Mr. Mayor, and if you could call our assessor.
Absolutely. Ms. Janie Culpepper, our interim assessor, if you would come forward, ma'am.
And Mr. Mayor, I asked the clerk to load the report because I wanted the citizens to just be able to see what I'm referring to as well. So I'm going to ask if you would turn to page 2 of the report. And my question, Ms. Culpepper, is that based on this report and what you mentioned at our previous council meetings, you mentioned that there are 3 parcels there at the Elizabeth Manor Golf Course. The parcel that is of concern has been the golf course parcel, in which it was previously told that the golf course had not paid taxes on that 140.3 acres of land. According to your report, just trying to get some clarification, and you only went back to 2003. Any particular reason why you couldn't go back any further?
The only reason that I have, sir, is that's all the information that I could find. We did contact the treasurer's office, and we were told that they had no information further back than that. We had this stored in our CAMA system, and I have the pages available
Okay.
if you'd like to see them. That's the only reason, sir.
Okay. You spoke with Mr. with the
No, sir,
treasurer?
I did not speak. It was
okay.
Kara, who is like his right-hand person, is the one who actually
Okay.
stated that they did not have the information.
Okay, because just to give some background, so based on your report, the golf course entered into an open space use agreement. As the citizens know, the real estate tax is based on 2 factors. It's based on your land value, and it's based on the tax rate that City Council establishes. By the golf course entering into an open space agreement, Elizabeth Manor, back in, according to your report, 1979.
Correct.
What that did was allow for the value of the golf course to be between $1,500 and $2,000 per acre. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, but I'm not sure what the value was back in
Back in
19... I
79.
didn't have any, I
Right.
couldn't find anything on that.
Right, but under the open space, it gives a value that the land should be calculated at per acre.
Correct.
Right, and so based on that, and then you multiply by the 1.3 or whatever that tax factor is, and you come up with your real estate tax. So my question is, with this open space agreement being in place, what does this represent from 2003 to 2017 on the chart here, where it says, for example, in 2003, the taxes were $58,454.56, but it was abated $58,454.56. What does that mean?
It means that the taxes were refunded or were taken off the roll of the treasurer. They receive one of the...
Yeah, so that you answered it. So that means that they were in an open space agreement, and they had agreed under that agreement to pay the taxes that are required by the Code of Virginia under that open space agreement. And instead of paying that, if they had not been under that open space agreement, their tax would have been $58,454.56.
Yes, sir.
They were abated that whole amount, but did they pay any taxes during that period?
They did not pay taxes until 22-23 tax year.
Okay, so from 2003, where they were supposed to have been paying taxes, their taxes were abated, which means that now, that's why I asked you for their net tax.
Yes, sir.
Because this nets out to zero. If I'm interpreting, I hear you
absolutely correct.
So who made that decision, and under what authority does the assessor's office have to abate And then when we get down to 2018, it looks like it's a pure exemption, because when you get down to the bottom, it's $0, and then it said for the taxes and 0 for abated. So evidently, instead of giving them an abatement, you just flat out exempted them from real estate taxes. And I'm trying to find out who has that authority to do that.
Well, first of all, Dr. Whitaker, let me say this. I wasn't here in 2018. I wasn't the assessor in 2003.
But when were you the assessor?
I was the assessor beginning in, let's see, I believe it was December the 11th, 2011, I believe so.
When I came on council, you were
Yes,
the
sir.
assessor.
Yes, sir.
And so I came on council in, 2014. And
Yes, sir. I
so
was
you were the assessor during this period where they were being abated, their
Yes, sir.
taxes. So what authority did you have as the assessor to abate their taxes when they were in an open space agreement where they're supposed to have been paying taxes?
Okay, I will tell you what I know and what I was told. Back in I think it was 2009, it might have been 2008, I don't remember the exact dates. We had an assessor here named Maria Cotman. When Ms. Cotman came on board, not too long after she was here, I was appointed as a deputy assessor. She came to me one day and asked me about the open space agreement. I had no idea what an open space agreement was. I had never been exposed to one in the whole time that I had been in the assessor's office. There was a file in the deputy assessor's office. As a matter of fact, there were 2 files in the deputy assessor's office that had information pertaining to an open space agreement. I asked Ms. Cotman about it. This is what Ms. Cotman told me, basically, that this was a normal and customary practice that had been going on in the city of Portsmouth for quite some time, and that within these files that I'm referring to were copies of the code, different.
Can I just interrupt?
Yes, sir.
Right. So, the city doesn't run on normal and customary practices. The city runs on policies. And so as the assessor, it's not enough for you to say someone told me that this is what should be done. You should be driven by policy. And what I see here is an abuse. And I see where an organization should have been paying their taxes, and they were not, and they were given the good graces of the assessor's office. And what makes this more problematic is that it's interesting that when Mr. Doris was the assessor here, and he raised the issue that these taxes weren't being paid, it's interesting in your chart there, the citizens will see that all of a sudden they decided to pay their real estate tax, and there was no abatement. And I find that highly problematic. That's why I asked you, when did they pay this tax? Because what it appears is that once the issue was raised, a payment was set in, but there was no abatement at this time. And I think that this is something that our city attorney needs to look into, because we have citizens in this city who are struggling paying taxes. And now here we go giving the Elizabeth Manor Golf Course significant, and in this case, they are basically have been exempted from paying taxes, even though they had signed an open space agreement. And I think that that's an issue that needs to be addressed from a legal perspective to see if there are some back taxes, because this goes into a deeper context than just the Elizabeth Manor Golf Course not paying taxes. And when citizens look at historically what happened with golf courses here in Portsmouth, it's interesting that this Elizabeth Manor Golf Course was created in 1951. It's interesting that that's done in 51, because also in 1952, you have a federal lawsuit by Dr. James Green against the city of Portsmouth, and the federal court ordered the city of Portsmouth to either create equal facilities where blacks could play golf or do not have a golf course at all. Instead of doing that, the city of Portsmouth auctioned off its golf courses and then later told blacks that you can play here only on Fridays. Dr. James Holly in 1957 took out a lawsuit against the city of Portsmouth in which he won. And I say that because all of this is taking place and Elizabeth Minor is created, golf course is created to further the racial discrimination that was going on in this city. So this isn't just an isolated incident. It's happening within the context of what was going on in Portsmouth. Portsmouth at that time had 4 golf courses. You have the City Park, Glen Shaler, Bidawee, and Elizabeth Minor. Those golf courses, except for Elizabeth Minor, those were public golf courses. Elizabeth Minor was private. But what was happening here with the assessor's office and when you were in office is that you all were treating this private golf course as if it were a public golf course. And therefore, just like you were prohibiting blacks from playing at Bidawee under a city lease, now you are also allowing this golf course to forfeit paying taxes. And also it has a very exclusive membership. And it's not even, that's why I want the city attorney to look at it, because to use the open space agreement, that's for public land, although the golf course falls under that. The city is not required to put this golf course under open space. And with the limited amount of land that we have, why would we allow for a private golf course to be exempted from taxes, but yet we don't do that for our private citizens? And also, at the same time, while all of this abatement and exemption is going on, this city was taking property from black folks on Sugar Hill because their taxes were delinquent. And now I see this going on. It lets me know that you and others in this position have been playing favoritism to certain segments of this city. And that last column where it shows the estimated market value,
Yes,
who determined that market value?
it was determined in my office, and the golf course that
Okay.
was used was Bidawee, but I also, if you will, let's see, I
Okay,
have.
let me just mention this.
Okay.
I just want to know who determined it, because the figure of this current assessment of $10,638, $10,638,830 that you have on the chart.
Yes, sir.
If you divide that by 140 acres, that doesn't come out to the value that those families that live on Sneed Fairway, their properties abut the golf course. The value of their properties are in the 95,000 range. When you divide this by 140, that's not $95,000. And so those families on Sneed Parkway were subsidizing the taxes for the golf course. Because you can't tell me by walking 1 foot that now your property value changes from 95,000 to 75,000. And so it's highly unfair. I think that what we see here is an abuse of power, and it has allowed persons in this city to benefit at the expense of others. And I don't think that this should be something that council should be quiet on and swept under the rug, considering that when we have seniors and those struggling trying to make tax payments, we make them pay. And if they don't pay, we take their properties. But you let this golf course, who is capable of paying, you let them off the hook. I think
Dr. Whitaker,
it's
first
reprehensible.
and foremost, I didn't let anybody do anything.
You were the assessor from 2000 when I came on council, and according to this, you said you were abating it. You were abating.
I was doing what was stated in the files that I can't find. Now, I have a question for you,
But
sir.
you can
Wait a
find-
minute,
you can
sir.
find the
Just a
law.
minute, sir.
Yeah.
Just 1 minute. You talked to me about the former assessor and the things that he found. Now, I think I have a right to answer that and why he was doing that. Now, here's my question.
Why he was doing what?
Why he all of a sudden decided to go into details about this.
Well, that's irrelevant. Why
Yes,
didn't you?
no, sir, it's
why
not.
hadn't you informed council when you were assessor? Why didn't you inform council of this?
Nobody-
Dr. Whitaker, sir.
No, I'm
you-
not gonna-
hold
I'm
on,
not
no,
gonna pivot. She's not gonna come
hold
here
on a
and
second,
pivot
sir.
it. Yeah.
But we got to do things in the proper order.
Right.
You had the floor. She's asked for the floor. Let's let her have the
All right,
floor.
That's fine.
You can
That's fine.
certainly
That's
talk to
fine.
her back.
That's fine. That's fine.
As I was saying, Dr. Whitaker, based on the information that I got from Maria Cotman, and I told you the statement that she made to me, not only was it her statement, but there were 2 files that had information and memos that stated that this property was non-taxable. If you look at the attachments that I put on here, it refers to them. Nobody ever questioned, to my knowledge, in the length of time that I've been with the city, ever questioned why was Elizabeth Manor like this.
I know they're the
Nobody-
ones never questioned it.
Just
That's
a
my
minute,
point.
sir. Why would I have questioned it?
Because of policy. You don't run your office based on hearsay and what someone tells. It's run on policy. Plus,
Would you
according
let me finish, sir,
according to
please?
policy.
Would you please let me
Well, let
finish?
me
No,
just
sir,
listen.
let me
According to
finish. You
policy-
ask, and I would like
I'm
to
gonna-
have
Point
an
of order.
opportunity.
Point of order.
They were supposed to have submitted
Dr.
an
Whitaker, we have a
application.
point of order on the floor. Mr. Moody, what is your point of order?
To allow Ms. Culpepper to reply to the accusations that are being thrown at her by Dr. Whitaker?
Not accusations. These are facts.
Yeah, they are
They're facts.
accusations.
Sir, we have a point of order. The point of order is recognized. The point of order is ruled in that we're going to allow for Ms. Culpepper to continue her discussion, and sir, you will have an opportunity to have your questions posed as well. Ms. Culpepper, you may continue, ma'am.
Thank you. As I was saying, that when I became the assessor, the first thing that was on my mind, and should be on any assessor's mind, is fair and equitable assessments for all the property in the city of Portsmouth. In looking at this, I understand your concern, but this is 3 parcels of land compared to the 36,000 other parcels that I have to look at. When I came back, you appointed me 90 days ago. I've actually worked 65 days as all the working days that I've had. And during this 65 days, one of the things that I was tasked with was to get the city assessor's office in order to review as much of the reassessment as I could to determine what the problem was and to proceed to correct it. That's what I have been doing. Then you started with the Elizabeth Manor stuff. So while I was working on this one particular parcel, the other parcels that had been erratically misassessed continued on. I mean, as long as today, as early as today, a lady called me from Prentice Park, one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city of Portsmouth, whose land.
Point of order.
No, I'm
This
finishing,
has
sir.
nothing to do
Oh, yes,
with
it does. It
Elizabeth.
has
You're
everything to do with it.
You're trying to pivot off of the
No,
issue.
sir. I'm
Mayor,
trying
point
to
of order.
explain to you.
Point of order.
I listened to you. I think I should have the opportunity. You talked about things
Ms.
other than this
Culpepper,
golf
Ms.
course.
Culpepper,
Yes, sir.
please hold.
Yes,
We
sir.
have a point of order on the floor. What is your point of order, sir?
Mayor, once again, my point of order is to allow the speaker to respond to the accusations.
Dr. Whitaker had a point of order. I'm asking him, what is your point of order, sir?
My point of order is that she addressed the issue that is at hand, and that is the fact that you abated the taxes for the golf course during your tenure as the assessor. Has nothing to do with someone calling from Prentice Park, okay? Because I know what you're trying to do. It's a distraction.
No, sir.
Deal with the issue of what was your authority to abate the taxes.
Point
Sir,
of order.
sir,
Point of order.
I asked the question, what was the point of order? In my listening to this discussion, she has already addressed the issue. So the point of order from Dr. Whitaker is not recognized. We will continue with the discussion, okay? She has addressed your concern. So, ma'am, please continue.
Okay. So anyway, by taking the time to look at this one parcel that's in land use, it is taken away from looking at the other parcels that belong to the citizens of Portsmouth. And an example of, we'll talk about taxes. Let me get my document out here. Well, I don't have it handy, but I can give you approximately. The changes that I have made and the corrections that I have made thus far, which will be updated to y'all in the next few days, the amount in taxes that have been brought back to the city in the 65 days that I have been there value over $2 million. That's my point. Now, did I abate the taxes? Yes, sir, I certainly did abate the taxes. But I abated the taxes. I didn't do it because of something that I wanted to do, and I thought, well, you know what, I think I'll just abate these taxes. I did it because there were files there that had the information in it. The files are no longer there. I talked to a former assessor, and he assured me that when he left there, the files were there. I don't know where the files are, so I really don't have any way to defend my actions whatsoever. But I personally did not abate taxes for these 20 years and how many back. I don't know. Like I say, without something in writing for me to look at, if you will look at the memos that are attached even after I left, if you will look, it refers to them being tax-free. And you talk about it being discriminatory. If you will look at one of the abatements that's in here, and it talks about it being tax-free, was done by Alethea Bryce, which happened to be an African-American woman who was an assessor, one of the finest women I've ever known in my life, and who trained me.
What does that have to do that?
The
I don't
same
care if it
thing
was
that
an
has to-
African-American or a white.
Evidently you do,
I'm
because
talking-
Sir, she has the floor. You don't, but you don't have the floor, sir. She has the floor.
But you were continuing to talk about what was done to the African Americans not being able to play golf. Well, I'm sorry, but I didn't do that.
Thank
Now,
you.
I have found in the code, that the 2022 code, that it states that those parcels of land that are in land use are to be taxed. It is on the tax rolls and will be continued to be taxed from here forward unless I have something different. But like I say, without the files that somehow magically disappeared when the former assessor was gone, I don't have anything in writing. The only thing that I can tell you is I did what previous people had done, what people did after I left. That's all I can tell you, Dr. Whitaker. I'm not a magician. I can't automatically pull these things out of the air.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Barnes, so you have the floor.
I guess my question is, when it comes to your authority and your job, are you supposed to operate based off of, and I'm just curious, are you supposed to operate off of word of mouth or by policy?
I operate by the Code of Virginia.
So in this particular situation, were you operating by the Code of Virginia or word of mouth?
I'm going to say that I'm assuming, since I don't have the documents in my possession.
I asked the question. It was yes or no.
Am I operating now? According to code, absolutely.
I'm talking about in this particular situation when you were here previously.
As far as I know, without the documents, I can't, the only thing that I can tell you is what I was doing and why I was doing it. Without the documents, I cannot verify or certify anything.
I was waiting for you to answer the question. So what I'm asking is, were you operating by word of mouth or were you operating by the Code of Virginia?
As far as I know, I was operating by the code.
Because somebody told you? Is
She
the
told
code,
me and
is
had-
that a new code when people tell you to operate a certain way?
Mr. Barnes.
Sir,
I mean, really,
wait,
why
hold
are
on.
you picking on me?
Hold on, Miss.
I'm not picking
hold
on
on.
you. I'm asking you questions.
Hold on.
As a
Hold on.
council member.
Point of order.
Hold
What
on.
is the point of order?
Sir,
Because
sir.
I haven't done anything
Sir,
to ask the point of question.
Sir, there's a point
Why
of order
is it
on
a
the
point of
table.
order and why is it trying to shut somebody down when we trying to find out
Sir,
what's going on with
sir,
our
you have
citizens'
asked-
taxes?
Sir, you have asked her the
But she
question
didn't answer
repeatedly.
the question.
You're out of
and why
order,
you gotta
sir.
continue to
Sergeant at Arms, please have him removed from this meeting. He is totally out of order and is unacceptable. I want him removed from this meeting.
why
right
you
now.
why you want to be
You're out of order, sir, because you
we're
are
trying
totally
to
out
find
of
out
order.
the facts of what's going
It
on.
has
in the
nothing
city.
to do with that, sir.
You
You are out of
always
order.
cut stuff off when you don't want the realness to come out and what's really going on in the
Please
city.
have the council member removed from the meeting, sir.
Still didn't answer the question.
You're totally out of order, sir. Sir, you are out of order. You are out of order, sir. You are out of order, sir. You are out of order. This is not a public speaking situation. You're out of order. Have a seat, please. Mr. Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of things. One, Ms. Culpepper is not on trial. This is not a trial. And Mayor, my other question is to the city attorney. Does council have the authority to determine what assessments should be?
Madam Attorney, you have the floor, ma'am.
There's been an attorney general opinion that has ruled that council does not have the authority to change or address a specific assessment, specific property. 2002 opinion of the Virginia Attorney 318 states that a local governing body may not determine if a property qualifies for special land use assessment and taxation in an individual case.
And Mayor, end of questioning. This council, as the city attorney just stated, does not have any authority over what anyone's assessment in this city should be. So.
And sir, let me just say this. And after I make my statement, we're going to take a brief recess for 5 minutes. But let me say this. We are a body, an elected body, and we should never, no one on this dais should ever talk to an employee or an appointee the way I have heard this interim city assessor being talked to. Regardless of what you may feel, how you may feel about the information that is presented, I will do everything in my authority as the chair to keep the order and the respect of this meeting and of our city staff and our appointees. Going forward, it will no longer be tolerated for anyone to be disrespectful and rude, and if you are or you intend to be, you will be called out of order and you will be escorted from this meeting. That is the rule, and we must maintain the highest regard and degree of decorum in this chamber. That is all I have to say. We will take a 5-minute recess and we will reconvene. Our council meeting back to order, and Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor. And in the interest of time, we have other business to get to. This will be the last question on this matter.
But my last question is just to the city attorney, and that is no objection from council that the city attorney report back on the authority of the assessor to abate or exempt taxes for a private golf course. Secondly, does that authority exist under open space law?
In an email that I sent around this afternoon and in the document that I left on the dais, has the baseline information to answer that question? If you're talking about more, okay.
No,
All right.
what you sent was basically just what the open space law is. I'm asking a particular question about the abatement and the exemption that was used by the city assessor. I don't need the history of the open space law. That's clear. I appreciate that, but that's not the legal issue. I think when you look at this document, and because it was emailed to you as well, you will see there's some glaring legal issues here.
The point I want to point out, though, is that what interim assessor Culpepper brought up, and what I brought to you all's attention in closed session is going to be a major issue in providing that information to you, which is there are documents missing. And without those agreements and those documents, you are going to get a regurgitation of exactly what I just presented. And so what I'm saying is, if there was an agreement made between an assessor, because part of the code, and I'm not negating what points you presented, I don't want you to take it as this, but part of the code talks about an assessor being able to use personal knowledge, judgment, and experience to value real estate. Now, that implies some value would be given. But we don't know if there was some arrangement made, whether appropriate or not, though legal, whether appropriate or not, based on the other parcels that they had paid some taxes on. I think they had a pool house and some other things. So without those documents, much like the tax cases that have come before us today, without the statements made on the part of the city, it's going to be difficult to say that. Now, is it unusual in this circumstance? Yes, you don't see this often in jurisdictions that a whole abatement would come, but the basis of the abatement would need to be known for me to answer that question specifically. But I will continue to look into it and see what we can find out.
The documents may be missing, but the law isn't missing.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Culpepper, thank you for your time, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
Are there any other items to submit by council? Seeing none, we will move then to report on pending items. Madam Manager, do you have any pending items?
No, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. We're now moving on to non-agenda speakers. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the speaker statement?
Ladies and gentlemen, City Council rules require a limit of up to 5 minutes to speak. As you approach the speaker's podium, you will notice a timer. At the beginning of your 5 minutes, you will see a green light. 4 minutes into your remarks, you will notice a yellow light. At the end of 5 minutes, you will see a red light, hear a beep, and we ask that you conclude your comments at that time. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on matters of public concern, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a belligerent, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. All remarks shall be directed to the City Council as a body rather than to any particular member of City Council, staff, or the audience, and should be limited to matters that only the Portsmouth City Council can influence. A speaker who fails to observe this basic rule of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our first speaker tonight is Ms. Melissa Williams. Ms. Williams, if you're here, if you would come forward, state your name and address, ma'am, and you will have 5 minutes.
My name is Melissa Williams. I reside in the Carver Circle area of Portsmouth. As we approach Juneteenth to celebrate the emancipation of Black Americans who were enslaved, let us be sure to include all symbols of what Juneteenth means and the people it represents. In addition to the history of Juneteenth, we sometimes have a tendency to just assume things without doing the proper research. We use the wrong colors and associate Juneteenth with the continent of Africa, when in reality Juneteenth has nothing to do with the continent of Africa. In this instance, I would like to talk about the official and only flag that represents Juneteenth. Dr. Ben Hayes, a community organizer and activist known better as Boston Ben, created this flag in 1997. Prior to the creation of this flag during Juneteenth celebrations, before it was nationally recognized, the American flag was used as the symbol to represent Juneteenth. In an interview with Capital B Atlanta, Dr. Hayes once said, once he learned about Juneteenth, he felt passionately and needed proper representation. After getting his inspiration for the flag, he knew which colors and symbols he wanted in the flag. Juneteenth is often sometimes misassociated with red, green, and black, the colors of the Pan-African flag. However, those aren't the colors of the Juneteenth flag. The banner shares the color of the American flag, red, white, and blue. In the past, Hayes has said that it was a purposeful choice, a reminder that Black Americans descend from slaves and are exactly that, American. The star in the middle of the flag has a dual meaning. On June 19, 1865, Black slaves in Galveston, Texas, were informed of the Emancipation Proclamation President Abraham Lincoln declared of the freedom of enslaved people. The star on the Juneteenth flag is meant to represent Texas as the Lone Star State, but also the freedom of enslaved citizens. The outline was inspired by a nova, which is an explosion in space that creates the appearance of a new star. In this instance, it represents both slaves being freed and new beginnings for Black Americans. The bottom half of the flag is red and shaped in an arch, which has a similar meaning to the white outline around the star. The curve is meant to represent a new horizon. As a descendant of an emancipated chattel slave in the United States of America, I stand here on behalf of my ancestors on both sides of my family, asking for Juneteenth to be represented correctly, using the right colors and acknowledging the right people. I'm asking for Black American customs and cultural traditions to be respected and observed properly. I offer this official Juneteenth flag to the city and ask that it be used as the official symbol of Juneteenth in celebration of America's second Independence Day. And in observance of Juneteenth, I would like to ask if this flag can be flown on Juneteenth of 2023. Thank you.
Ms. Williams, thank you, ma'am, for that information. Our next speaker is Mr. Garrett Knuckles. Garrett Knuckles.
I'm going to make this short and concise because it's rather late and I have work in the morning. Mr. Whitaker actually used some wording that would fit my predicament quite well, favoritism within the government. My boss, friend of mine for about 10 years, he is renting to own a house, 1219 Highland Avenue, 5 years now. The house directly adjacent to us, 1217 Highland Avenue, actually, according to the property line, is a foot over. It is on our side of the property line. This structure is collapsing. I have been hit with debris. I have made phone calls to your inspections department. He has made phone calls about the house for 5 years. People all across our block has been calling about 3 houses on our side of the road that are busted windows, overgrown with vines, pest rampant, mold rampant, falling on people. And here's where my situation with the favoritism comes in. We've been bringing these issues up, and these houses don't get touched. No condemnation sign, no letter of, I can't remember the exact word, to deal with the issue. None of that on these houses, yet we're repairing a home to be resold in less than 6 months. Private contractors trying to upgrade the city, yet every day we get a letter. We have to jump through a hoop and pay more bills. And the house next door hits me? I don't find that fair. I don't find it understandable or reasonable from your inspections department at all. And on top of that, I got on the docket yesterday at like 8 p.m. The owner of my house, not me, and I left my phone number, the owner of my house got a phone call saying that he had issues legally with them over inspections for something that they have not said anything about before, until suddenly I'm on the docket the day before. Now, I don't know how this looks to you. I don't know how you intend to deal with it, and I don't need any recourse on how you intend to deal with it. The only problem is there is favoritism and problems within the government, and Mr. Whitaker's determination and zeal in confronting that issue I fully support that, 100%. But on top of that as well, and no offense to you, Mr. Whitaker, but the display I saw a few moments ago was very heartbreaking. That's why I'm having trouble speaking. I'm a believer of free speech and democracy. You threw your gavel several times on several other members of the speaking floor. They continued to speak over you. You did not eject them. Mr. Barnes spoke once, continued to speak once, and you ejected him. That is an egregious affront to my democracy and to my free speech.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Ms. Star Howe. Are you present, ma'am? Star Howe. Our next speaker, Mr. Mark Godaldig-Jutrovsky. Sir, you state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, council, and other neighbors. I'm registered. So the reason I intended to speak originally is reinforced by tonight's events. When I spoke to you Wednesday, a week ago almost, I neglected to make one point about doing a search for a city manager. And this is late, but I wanted to be out there for your instruction as to how this constituent feels about the way you conduct business. And that is that I believe council, not this particular council, but its predecessor and this council, have an unfulfilled responsibility at this point in time. If we are going to open our hiring process to a larger audience, we have a responsibility, my employees up there, have a responsibility to rebuild their credibility as employers. Because the way councils have conducted themselves, at least for the last 3 years, have cast doubt as to what kind of work environment somebody applying for a position in the city of Portsmouth as a direct report to city council is going to face. The exchanges that occurred just a little while ago are really terrible examples of mismanagement. There are two key elements of supervising employees, and I've been there. I've done it professionally. I've done it under the auspices of our HR department in a large private corporation. There are two things: trust and respect. They are not one-way elements. There must be trust and respect on both sides of the relationship. And so all of you on this dais, as 1/7 of the employer known as City Council, have an individual responsibility to foster trust and respect in your employees. You must trust them and you must respect them in order to receive it in return. The power equation favors you, but that is no reason to treat them disrespectfully and distrust them. So I am telling you, as your employer, 1/95,000th of your employer base, that these are my expectations. And I will express my pleasure or displeasure the next time we have an election for mayor and council. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Mr.
Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Yudowski, I find it interesting that you are part of a Citizens Watch group. And I find it interesting, as part of that watch group, you tend to write about issues of abuse in government. I find it interesting that you come up here and try to lecture about behavior than dealing with the issue that was at hand, and that was some abuse and favoritism in government policy and practice. I find that very interesting. I'll see if you will address that with your watch.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Mr. Leon Hammonds. Mr. Hammonds, would you come forward and state your name and address, sir? You will have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman. We're back to where we started, I guess, with the city manager situation. Finally, we're going to do it right, I hope. Go by the procedure. All of a sudden, that's the main thing, which I hope that stays the main thing. The main procedure, the SOP. Stick by the procedure. And Ms. Terry there, she did a good job. She's more like the troubleshooter. And I've heard from other people from other cities that see, they wouldn't put in for the job, not for Portsmouth. That's a bad reputation. That's not good. Every 6 months we're going through a city manager. But that's where life is. But you got to realize one thing. We need to grow better. We need to do better. We need to take a look at ourselves as a city. We're a small city. Stop being small. See, we think small. Some things you turn down that will help people, and then some things you approve that's not helping people. But you need to do better than what you're doing. Now, regardless of what people said, you know, everybody has their good points, and you darn sure got your bad points. You may not say it, you may not say your good points either, but people see everything. So just adhere to that. And I want Ms. Terry, where she has my vote, I don't know her, but the job she's done as a interim, the job that she's done as assistant city manager, she knows Portsmouth. So really, you know, whether she get the job or not, but I wouldn't continue to be troubleshooter if I was her now. I'll be honest with you. See, you have to move on sometime, you know, because sometimes it's just not in the cards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Our next speaker is Keon Barrett. Keon Barrett. Did I pronounce your name right, sir?
You did, thank you.
Okay.
So everyone, my name is Keon Barrett. I live at 3911 State Flower Court. And I wanted to talk a little bit about education. See, I'm a proud educator. While I do not teach in Portsmouth Public Schools, it's not because I didn't want to. I teach at Greensville County High School. I'm a proud Eagle. But I did want to give back to my community. So I have a tutoring service called Higher Purpose Learning that's based in Portsmouth. And we are very highly rated in the city of Portsmouth. Now, back in May, the governor announced that there would be a grant for tutoring services to give free tutoring to students in all of Virginia. So the VA K-12 Learning Acceleration Grants. Now, a lot of schools didn't really promote it the way I thought they would, because free tutoring sounds like something that everyone should be on board with. Regardless if your child is behind, regardless if they want to just get a head start on their education, it's important. I have a client who I worked with for years who got picked on for having a tutor. And he started off not having the best math scores, but this year passed his math SOL with a pass event score. And that's something that I'm very proud of, and that's something that I want to make sure that Portsmouth residents get. I get a lot of referrals from Portsmouth members and citizens who really want their children to succeed. And I know our schools do a good job because I'm a proud Churchland High School graduate. And I was at the top of my class when I was there, and I went on to William & Mary. And I did very well there as well. And I still want to make sure that I'm able to give back and educate people about how to make sure that their children are receiving the best services. Because teachers are really struggling right now. They're struggling to manage these classrooms. They're struggling to just keep an eye on the kids and make sure that they're safe. Safety is a big concern in schools right now. So giving students just the opportunity to work with someone one-on-one or in a small group after school is very important, because everyone on that council has an education, highly educated individuals who are doing a great job at being passionate about their city. You were not elected just because you are a popular person. You were elected because of your passion and your dedication. And I really want to stress that education is the way that we're going to really achieve success in Portsmouth and bring them to a new level, because our young people is where it's at. Because I was there, and I know that education saved my life, because coming in, being on just someone who didn't have all the resources, single mother, like I knew that I had to get a scholarship. There was no option for me to pay for school, so I had to study. I didn't ask for help. I did it on my own. But to have the opportunity to get free help, everyone should be taking advantage of that. And I thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Our next speaker is Ron Sauer. Good evening, sir. If you state your name and address, you have 5 minutes.
Ron Sauer, Somerset Drive, 23703. Okay. I'm going to try to change the subject around here a little bit, I hope. Everybody knows I talk about boots on the ground people, and I want to say a thank you to our sewer workers, to our water workers, you don't hear that from anybody, really. The garbage people. Without them doing the job that none of us would probably ever do or volunteer to do, you wouldn't have a city. And I don't think anybody really pays that much attention and gives them that much credit for doing the things that the rest of us don't want to do to make a city a city. Do you want to get down in the sewers and start cleaning the sewers out? Do you want to pick up the garbage? So I think maybe we should spend a little time thanking those people who do that. And perhaps in some way, using the word forgiveness for something maybe that doesn't go right while they're working, and we scream and holler at them that they didn't do it right, they didn't pick this up, they didn't do that, they didn't do this. Well, maybe something broke down or whatever that's beyond their control. And without forgiveness, we get nowhere anyway. We just wind up not really having a city. So we need to thank the people who do the jobs that we don't want to do. We need to thank the people who are behind the desk also, who never get seen. Yet they're there, and without them, you don't have a job either. So we need to really thank a lot of people that we don't thank. We don't even think about thanking them. And maybe once a day, saying a thank you to the janitor might just be something that might get them to work a little bit better also. Because they might not feel then that they're betrayed by their employer. And I say betrayed because if you don't think about them and you don't care about them and you don't think they're worth anything, and they think that, the next thing they think is that they're betrayed. And that why should they work harder? Why should they do anything? So that has to start with the council. I'm sorry, but that has to start with the people sitting up here and the one who's not here right now. So anyway, that's all I've got to say. I'll keep it short, and I hope that makes everybody feel a little bit better.
Thank you for those kind words, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Clyde Toller. Good evening, sir.
Good evening to all.
Good evening, sir.
To the mayor, vice mayor, sergeant arms, members of council, and the city manager, and the attorney, and Miss White. Miss White, in your little cot, you know, you throw around and tell me, get on up here, Tola, and your little go-kart, but the Coast Guard and the park, they did a great thing with Memorial Day. I take my hat off. This was the largest crowd turnout from Norcom all the way downtown to the flagpole. I never seen any many people out to see the parade, and I've been in every one except one since '81. I was in North Carolina. Of course, the mayor had been the parade down there. But anyway, I would like to see a lot of things happen here at this council. Don't take my money and go out here, no $20,000, $22,000, $23,000, $100 looking for no city manager. We got one, and I'm tired of her taking and cleaning up all these people you go out getting, coming here and cleaning up their mess, and you bring her right back up here. No, keep her, get somebody else, and let her stay there, and don't spend that $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. Paint that crazy water towel. Get that water towel painted. And I want you to go out there to Mosburg and Johnny Cool's, the place, and look at it. And then I want you to get in the car, and I want you to go down Airline Boulevard, look at all the grass, trees growing out the water mains and things, all the grass growed up. This is terrible. This is the main drag. You could take that money if you don't have the people to do it. Now, Miss Bernadette is working her head off, but somewhere the ball is being dropped. She turning in, supposed to be getting it done, but somebody below her or somewhere is not doing their job, because look at all them weeds out there. Have you been out there and looked at them? Have you drove all the way down there and looked at them weeds? Get that grass and all that mess cleaned up. If you take that money and hire a contractor, then you won't have to be spending my money going around looking for another city manager. Don't get rid of her, because we, the people, is getting tired of seeing her bounced around. So don't do that no more. Anyway, for the police, you're doing a good job. But there's some peoples over there on King Street and Constitution. There's about 40 feet. Somebody cut bushes, been laying out there for months. From there clean to Constitution Avenue off of King Street. And there's a house there on that corner. You got people's homeless living in there with little kids and things. Go by there and check that out. And they got an old garage sitting there. And secret you go in there because the people are living in there at night. And that place needs to be looked into right over there by Bethel's church. So go over there and take care of that because that needs to be looked at. But I'm getting back to disrespect on this council. It shouldn't be. Anytime a councilman get up here and the mayor say, hey, that's enough, shut up, he don't shut up, $3,000 fine, and if he continue, $500 fine. Look, we pay him to be here to do his job. So either you gonna respect us as citizens and you gonna respect the mayor. This is totally, just totally no good. You don't be disrespect like that. So that need to be stopped. But all these weeds and things in the city, you need to get these things done because the city looks bad. You got that money coming from the casino? All right, let me see you do something with it. I trust you, each and every one, and I'll back you 100%. You'd be surprised. I'm the greatest organization in the world. And we stand by you. And I respect you when I come up here because I look for you to do the job that you do. But we need to clean this city up. And if you don't, I'm not going to do it, but until you don't clean it up, you see this? I got it right here. But I'm going to get Channel 10, you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to get it. We're going to drive it around. I'm going to show it on TV. So you better get the city cleaned up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Toller. Our next speaker, Mr. Seagraves, James Seagraves.
Thank you. Good evening, folks. I apologize for my attire.
Please state your name and address, sir.
Sure. James Seagraves, 4716 Thornwood Street in Portsmouth. Before the meeting, I was trying to get rid of all the ligustrum and Chinese privet at Paradise Creek Nature Park, and I only got one big stump out, but it was worth the time. My presentation really is pretty mundane. For a number of cycles and partway through the pandemic, what our trash day isn't our trash day anymore. Most of the time in my neighborhood, Monday turns into Tuesday for the trash pickup. Sometimes the trash gets picked up on Monday and then recyclables on Tuesday. Sometimes it switches, sometimes both times. Likewise, recently with Memorial Day, our backup day was Wednesday. The trash wasn't picked up on Wednesday. It was finally picked up on Thursday afternoon. Today, this week, Monday, nothing happened. Tuesday morning, the trash was picked up about mid-morning, but I noticed that it was one truck, and the one truck was picking up both cans at the same time and putting them in to the truck at once, which was mixing the recyclables and the other waste. I was curious about that, so I followed the truck, and that seemed to be the case the rest of the way through the Cavalier Forest subdivision. I stopped the driver. I asked what was going on with all of these late pickups. She said that they were greatly understaffed. And as a former maintenance supervisor, facility manager, I can understand that, and I know about processes. I recently found out that one of the city councilmen, along with two senior members of the staff of the city spent time following trash trucks in the city and very quickly picked up some process improvements on their own that they could help reduce the load on the folks that are picking up the refuse. The lady that I talked to today was very professional, very polite. I think she was telling me that even though she wasn't supposed to pick up the recyclables, she was doing it on short streets with cul-de-sacs because she was trying to help the other crew catch up. And I think that's great teamwork and trying to do your best for the other folks you work with. What the city councilman and those other senior folks did was what you call is management by wandering around. I used it for many years. It means you have to get down in the weeds and follow things and check processes. My only problem with it is that it shouldn't be at the level of a city councilman and most senior staff members following trash trucks around, seeing how they're being hampered in their duties, and then them proposing these worthwhile changes. So I would encourage the folks here in the council to encourage people at lower levels, first and second line supervisors, to pursue process improvement by practicing management, by wandering around, checking the processes, and doing the best they can with the horrible shortage of employees, because things like trash, police, fire department, the old Maslow's hierarchy of needs as it applies to a person is those things like food, shelter, clothing. In the city, that's roads, water, sewer, trash, fire, police. And those are the things that really are important to do, even though there may be shortages. So I thank you all very much for this time.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. And that concludes our non-agenda speakers for tonight. Thank you all for coming. And if there's no other business to conduct, this meeting is adjourned.